Hello out there, and we're welcoming back Representative Charlie Kimbell for week 2 of our legislative updates. We're recording this on Friday, the second Friday of the legislative session, the new legislative session. So welcome back, Charlie, and thanks for joining us via Zoom.
Glad to be back.
Yeah. So how was your week this week?
It was a long week. It seemed to be just very busy. Was trying to think. We finally got the House clerk to give us at least a minute after she signs off the business for the end of the day so that we can at least say goodbye to one another over Zoom. Until then, it's just there is no opportunity for people to talk to one another. So it's a very strange COVID world that we've gotten used to over the past year and a half, and we're just trying to adapt. So that was kind of funny. There's one guy that always says, bye-bye. He says it twice. And people hang for it. They're waiting for it. So we finally got that back. So just a funny thing about doing business over COVID, over Zoom. But it was,
a lot of awkward interactions.
Very many, just like that.
Pregnant pauses and the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
They're talking over one another. Yes. Somebody's system not being in sync. Yeah, like that. But there are a few things that happened. We had a first ever introduction of the Rural Economic Development Omnibus Bill that we had on Thursday. That was just yesterday. And we had 28 representatives sign on to this. It's tripartisan. And it really tries to look at what things should be changed to help rural Vermont, which is most of Vermont except for Chittenden County, really grow and sustain their economies. So there was like 10 elements of it. And I'll just give you a really quick introduction as to what those are. And first was looking at a forest future program. There is already in place a farm to plate program, which helps look at all of the different food producers that are supplying restaurants and grocery stores and schools already in Vermont. We're looking to do something similar for the forestry program for wood products industry. So that's one thing. The second is a forest-based enterprise exception for their hours of operation. Act 250 is tough to operate in for forest enterprises when they have to just operate for maybe 60 to 90 days when the ground is frozen. And a lot of the people that we've spoken to want to operate through the night when the ground is frozen, because as soon as it thaws out, and it thaws out earlier with climate change, then they are out of business for a while until it all thaws out, and then they can go back on the land. Another is looking at recreation trails, making it easier to establish and maintain mountain bike trails or ATV trails or what have you. So looking at the permitting processes, again, Act 250, we'll see what happens there. Another is permit reform for towns that don't have really any kind of zoning, and looking at obtaining a master permit to make it easier to then locate housing or whatever development they want in that village, maybe not a village center, but in that particular area. So if the town can get a master permit with the help of the Regional Planning Commission, then they could get one of those. And it would make it a lot easier for some of these smaller towns to actually develop housing, which is really cool. Looking at community wastewater systems, I think we talked about that before, talking about small pipe wastewater or water, because you can't locate, if you have a high water table in your village, you cannot locate next to one another because you're going to pollute each other's water system. So trying to make it easier to fund those and permit those. And looking at accessory on-farm businesses, looking to clarify what the definition of an accessory on-farm business is. So what we had in Woodstock recently with the Peacefield Farm would be a lot easier to navigate from a permit standpoint by saying, yes, it is, or no, it isn't, right out of the gate. And that would make it a lot easier for everybody involved. Another is looking at municipal fuel switching programs. We've got 251 towns in Vermont, and a lot of them have very old office buildings, town halls, libraries, and they have old heating systems as well. We're trying to figure out a way to give them the ability to more easily switch that heating system, and that means money, and provide some money to help them do that. So instead of burning a lot of oil, they might burn wood pellets. Now, we've already done that for schools, but now we need to do it for those town halls or those libraries that are still in use, but they're just using a lot of oil. Anyways, so those are some of the pieces of the Rural Economic Development Bill, and there's a lot of different moving parts in there, but we're really excited about that.
And where does, so you said you've moved it through your working group, and where is it now?
So this thing is a behemoth. So it's big. It's likely that it will not go all by itself into a committee and then have that committee take up all the different issues in it. So what we've also done is that we've split them up into separate bills, and those are going to the committees of jurisdiction as well. So for instance, that forestry piece is going to go to the Committee on Agriculture. And so they'll take it up. And the one on accessory on-farm businesses, that'll probably go to the Committee on Natural Resources. So, and also agriculture. So it depends on where it starts. So we're trying to make sure that the individual parts will be taken up, and then working with those committee chairs to make sure that they think it's important to take up. The committee chairs have a lot of, I wouldn't say power, but a lot of discretion in what their committee takes up. So some bills never come off the wall. And we want to make sure that they do consider them because they're important to rural Vermont. A couple other quick things that happened this week is the governor did sign a bill we talked about last week that allowed towns to go into remote meetings for town meeting day. Another bill that came up was to permit people that are running for municipal elections not to have to collect signatures. So a town may give those people seeking to be on the school board or the select board or trustees the ability to run for the office without going door to door and possibly contracting coronavirus.
Interesting. I wonder if that applies also to organizations. Like in some towns, they require organizations who are seeking support to get petitions on the town meeting ballot. And so yesterday, I happened to be at the Reading Greenhouse, and Reading, I guess, does have that requirement. So somebody from WISE, the nonprofit WISE, was out there collecting signatures. But.
Yeah, and I don't think that's not part of what we addressed, and I'm sure the towns still have that as a requirement. And I did talk to somebody that was going not door to door, but making phone calls saying, "Can you please come?" Because not as many people are coming into the library as usual. So now we need to make sure people come and sign our petition to get enough signatures to get on the ballot. So that's not part of what was waived, but. Another part that is any kind of open meeting law gives a temporary exemption so that you do not have to have a physical place to meet. So you can do a remote meeting.
So much like the emergency order that was in place last year. It put like a moratorium or whatever, a temporary hold on open meeting law.
It still has provisions, like you still have to publish your minutes within 10 days after having the meeting. You still, if you're going to have it over Zoom or some other electronic means, you have to record the meeting and then make that recording available, unless there's something that really prevents you from doing it. And then you have to.
Is there a sunset date on this?
January 2023.
Oh, wow. So it's for the whole year.
Yeah. And the other big one, which is really kind of interesting, is reapportionment. So it got really heated today in the House. And this is a big deal, but the towns, the boards of civil authority in the towns are going to have until February 15th to weigh in on what the legislature wants to do with the House districts. So it's a very short window. So the legislature debated today, the House did, as to what form of request is being sent out to the boards of civil authority. So there are a couple of different maps with a couple different proposals that they can look at and then respond to. Now, the Legislative Apportionment Board already did part of this work, but a lot of towns felt like their suggestions weren't included. They weren't taken into consideration. So the House is much different. We've committed to saying, yeah, tell us what you think. We're really going to listen and then make changes as we need to. So anyway, so that's happening. We voted on that today. It's a two-step process, and now we take all that information into account. So that's some of what's going on. There's other stuff that's pending. The Budget Adjustment Act is something that was passed out of the Appropriations Committee. Next week, the governor is giving his budget address. And that's big. He declares his priorities for the year and how to spend money. And we found out yesterday that the state's revenues are outpacing what the estimates were. So we're going to have more money to figure out what to do with. So that's going to be the big thing throughout the session, is figuring out, all right, so we've got this ARPA money. Now we have excess revenues. Where do we spend it? And there's a temptation to spend it on new programs. There's a temptation to spend it on all sorts of things. It's almost a worse problem than not having enough money from a legislative standpoint, not from a needs standpoint.
And everybody has a different idea, I'm sure, on how to use the available funds.
Oh yeah. I did run out to get
A lot of clamoring going on.
I ran out to get a cup of coffee today, and I ran into some constituents. We're talking about new school construction. How are we going to fund new school construction? When is the state going to kick in some money for that? That's a real issue. I mean, you've got the Woodstock School is built in 1956. I think 1957 it opened. It's pretty old. It needs some new stuff. And there's no doubt that there needs to be a new school. But it's a heavy price tag. It really will overtax the local residents. So it's trying to come up with a system there. But I think that's the news from the State House this week as to what's going on. Yeah.
A lot going on.
A lot going on. So, okay. Yeah. You happy it's the weekend?
I'm very happy. Although since I'm running for lieutenant governor, I'm going to be making a lot of phone calls, but at least it's going to be so cold outside that I won't want to go out skinning or mountain biking or that kind of stuff tomorrow. Woo.
Yeah. You try to get out and do something every weekend in that outdoors? Absolutely.
Yeah. The skiing last weekend was great. I just went up Old Gilbert's Hill in Woodstock, the site of the original ski tow in America. That was great. And the people that own the property there are open to it and they welcome it. So that's wonderful. And then fat biking, going on a mountain bike ride on the trails on Mount Peg or out of the reservoir here in Woodstock is great. I haven't ventured onto the cross-country ski trails, but it's just good to get out.
Well, all right, Charlie. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks a lot, Patrick.
Thank you.